Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, and congratulations to all of you for matching. We're going to take a minute or two to let everyone still roll in. But while we wait, let's just have some of our presenters introduce themselves and, you know, just do a little quick intro before we get into our material.
Awesome.
Michael, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Michael Johnson. I have a law firm, Michael Johnson Legal, and our primary practice is physician contracts, helping individual physicians as they evaluate, negotiate, and then sometimes fight about physician contracts. And we do the evaluation and negotiation piece, all specialties and across the country. But that's us.
Nice. Janice?
Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Broden. I'm a financial advisor. I run my own practice and partner with Northwestern Mutual specifically. I've been in the industry for about 17 years and running my own practice for the last 7 years. And we specialize in helping medical professionals with all of their financial planning needs.
Thank you. Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat Kayura-Wongs. I am the CEO and co-founder of LoanSense. We are a technology company that also has a pretty strong consulting arm. And we basically help with student loans. We manage PSLF for a lot of different healthcare professionals, from doctors, a lot of nurse practitioners, and PAs as well. And of course, a lot of public servants in general. And we have a really strong hold, especially in the mortgage, helping with documentation for mortgage affordability. And excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe Taylor in St. Louis. I'm a real estate agent here, but also the founder of Moving Medicine Partners. It's a national organization of realtors that are all married to physicians. So not only have we all lived through a lot of changes and a lot of moves and transitions, and utilizing physician loans firsthand and understanding the demands of the time and everything that goes along with, especially post-match day moves. We're just, your real estate agents that are here to advocate for you and give you guidance along your journey.
Awesome. And for myself, my name is Kayla Got My Tan. I'm a mortgage advisor with Downtown Financial Group. I have my own practice and really focusing on helping physician healthcare workers through medical mortgages and really, helping you guys find the right mortgage that helps as you go along through this journey and making sure it's helping you grow your net worth and helping with all of your needs. So before we get started, we have Michael and Kat here who have a hard stop. For any of our attendees, if you have any specific questions for them as they're going through the material on contracts or student loans, I would highly encourage all of you to write that in the Q&A or chat. I'll be monitoring that through their presentations. That way we could get your guys' questions specifically to those topics answered now. And if there's anything that comes up later for them, we'll direct it, give your contact information. They'll probably also share it as well for you guys to get connected on that. So with that being said, let us get started. And so first up, we have Michael, who will be talking more on physician contracts.
Very good. So if you're coming into training right now, okay, you just match, you're coming into training, you're probably not thinking about physician contracts and signing employment agreements right this moment, but it's going to come on you very, very quickly, okay? For the most part, first year you get through intern year, it's probably going to be drinking from a fire hose type scenario. Want to get through that first, but once you get past first year, there's plenty of opportunities to start considering, hey, what type of career do I want after my training? Some employers are more than willing to interview you, consider hiring you, consider paying you advanced stipends like signing bonuses, training stipends, moving stipends very early on. So this is going to come at you quicker than you might think. And I want to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about the key physician contract issues that you need to understand before you start interviewing, before you start going through this process. Okay. So a few too many slides here, but big picture on physician contracts. They all really boil down to three big questions. Okay. In an ideal world, you will have clarity on one, your work obligations. What are you required to do? Okay. Second, you're going to have clarity on your compensation plan, not just your base salary and your signing bonus. Those are both going to be very exciting because you get a massive jump right after training. It's going to feel great. Okay. However, there's a lot that goes into your future comp models and how much you're paid on your volume long term. Okay. We mostly pay physicians based on volume, not on seniority, not on time, not on quality of work. Doing work a half click above malpractice is usually paid about the same as doing it the best that can be done in your specialty, which is obviously a silly system. But it's important to understand at baseline that volume typically pays. So we want to understand the compensation implications of how your volume is paid long term. Okay. Also, though, you're most likely to underestimate how tricky it is to get out of physician contracts. Okay. The exit strategy clauses here can be very penal, very wild. So we have things like non-compete clauses, sticky termination rights that can make it very difficult for you to easily transition jobs. Okay. Being employed as a physician and trying to change jobs, it's not like working at Starbucks. You can go to Dunkin' across the street the next day and get another job. Like, it's really no big deal. In physician world, there's a lot that has to happen before you can transition jobs. And it takes a lot of time. And also these contracts can make it very difficult for you to practice locally post-employment. We're going to dive into a few more of those details. But if you're ever thinking, okay, what are physician contracts about? A lot of times you'll start thinking about base salary, signing bonus, and time off. Okay. Stick to those to the side for the moment though. Okay. Because big picture, we want clarity on your work obligations, how you're going to be compensated long term, and making sure that you have some reasonable freedom to get out of your contract whenever you're wanting to, whenever you're unhappy. Okay. There we go. Base salary, when you're looking at comp negotiations, base salary is important. Okay. But for most of you, you'll have a base salary that's guaranteed for maybe 1 to 3 years. And then after that, your compensation will often be in whole or in part based on your clinical volume. So negotiating for more base salary may or may not help you that much. It might only help you for a couple years. So if you think, oh, my starting salary was 300, I got a bump to 330K, I got a 10% bump, that might not help you long term. It might help you for a very small period of time. Okay. But what's probably more important for the majority of you is how your volume is paid. Specifically, what is your compensation per work RVU rate? You may have not been introduced to work RVUs when you were in training, but when you're in medical school, but you should get introduced to them in training, and they'll become very important when you get out of training and you're, paid as a physician. Okay. Work RVUs, it's simply a point system that measures everything that physicians do. So if you're, let's say, a proceduralist, you perform a procedure, you might get 10 to 20 work RVUs for doing that procedure. If you see someone in clinic, you might get 1 to 2, 2.5 points for that clinic visit. The way that most employment compensation models work is that they count those number of points and then they pay you on a per point basis. Okay, a compensation per work RVU rate. So when you go to evaluate comp opportunities, don't stop at base salary and signing bonus. You need to understand what is that compensation per work RVU rate? Some of you might be paid a percentage of collections on your work, but if you go to a hospital system, it's often going to be a compensation per work RVU rate. Okay. So when you go into your interviews, when you're thinking about offers, make sure you do some additional due diligence in the firm. When we counsel folks on what to negotiate for, a lot of folks will come to us and say, hey, I'd like to ask for more base salary and more signing bonus. But we'll often advise them that negotiating on your long-term comp models, on how much you're paid on your volume overall, is going to be much more lucrative, because that is something that can be repeated year over year over year over year. Okay. If you want to make big jumps in compensation, you typically have to pull on one of these three big compensation levers. First is volume. Okay, volume pays in physician world. If you are doing a lot of volume, either clinically, procedurally, what have you, you can typically make a lot more than others in your specialty. So that can pay. Second is geography. How physicians are paid is typically the inverse of cost of living. Sounds crazy. But as you move your practice into the most attractive urban markets where a lot of physicians want to live, a lot of people want to live, there's often less of a physician shortage, and employers, frankly, can often pay you a little bit less. But if you're more flexible on geography, where you're willing to live, you might be open-minded to moving to places where there is a massive physician shortage, where they have to pay a premium to entice physicians to come to this area. I live in the Midwest, kind of north side of Milwaukee. Milwaukee's not bad, it's fine. We get a little bit more comp in Milwaukee compared to other places. Okay, winter was kind of rough this year, so maybe that's why. But if you move into like central or northern Wisconsin, for example, where there's really not a lot of large urban centers, on average, the comp will be higher compared to the most attractive urban markets. Okay. Not always, but on average, that is an important driver of comp. Third is practice settings. On average, if you go to an academic center, you pursue an academic career, on average, you're going to make less. Okay. In some specialties, it depends on specialties. Some specialties, if you own your own practice, then you're often going to make more than, on average, than your peers within that specialty. And then hospital employed, it really just depends. If you're employed by a large hospital system, then your starting comp is probably going to be higher than other jobs that you see. But long term, it might not offer the same income, like growth potential, compared to owning your own practice or doing something else. But if you can have a bit of flexibility on practice settings and consider maybe hospital or private practice opportunities that are outside of the most attractive urban markets, on average, that's where we see the most comp. Okay. We can still negotiate within the same set of volume, same location, same practice setting, but the scope of improvements is going to be a bit smaller than if you're willing to pull on one or all of these three levers. Okay. We see wild differences in how much physicians are compensated, even within the same specialty. Okay. So my wife is an outpatient adult psychiatrist. We live and work in Wisconsin. There's a nice premium for this. It's very different than being in San Diego or Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Seattle for some reason, or a place where everyone wants to work and live. So consider that. Also, within the same specialty and in the same practice setting, if you move around volume, then the outcomes can be wildly different. I see plenty of psychiatrists that are making $600,000 plus, and I see plenty of psychiatrists that are making $250K or less. And it really matters more on these 3 points compared to what your specialty is. Okay. It's rare, but I will see some private practice pediatric owners, some that are making a little bit more than the most academic early career neurosurgeons. It's a rare scenario, okay? But there's a lot of variability within a specialty. So that kind of covers that middle question of comp. As you go through training, reach out to mentors, talk with your academic attendings, ideally talk with some folks outside of academia, but within your specialty about what they're doing each day, what their day-to-day looks like, what are some of the key friction points in their practice. Think about where and how you want to practice. Also, when you get to the point where you start considering jobs, you might pick a job based on a very specific set of work expectations that are discussed during the interview process. Okay. So for example, for us, my wife, outpatient adult, she really wanted something less than 5 days. She wanted a 4-day work week or a 3-day work week. And that's something we negotiated for. She wanted partial tele. Okay, so she's 7 weeks remote, 1 week in person. That's something that we have worked on. You can work on things like call schedule, like work location clauses. I could talk about this for the rest of the time, okay? There's a lot of things that go into this. But first, during training, think about what you want your career and life to look like post-training. And then during your interview process, make sure you understand what the employer is able to offer you. If there are things that are very important that make you very excited about picking job A over job B, then we really want to make sure that those work obligation promises are actually in the contract. Okay. The way that contracts work is that there'll be a clause in there that says anything we promised you that is not included in this document is not valid, it's unenforceable, we're not promising that thing. So for example, if during the interview process they promised you that your work schedule is going to be 4 days a week, maybe a little bit longer days, but 4 days a week instead of 5 days, or your call schedule is never going to be worse than Q5, or you were only going to work at hospital A and none of the other hospitals in our system. Whatever made you excited, let's make sure that that thing is reflected in the contract. And if it's not, then let's negotiate for that. And there is room to move on these things to try to put some guardrails around what your practice is going to look like moving forward. Okay. And then lastly, before you sign any employment agreement, I want to make sure you understand your exit strategy. Okay. We'll spend our last couple of minutes on non-competes because that's something that everyone asks about and they have a pretty big impact on physician contracts, okay? I think it's at 38 or 39 states at this moment allow for non-competes against physicians within their state. They're still enforceable across the board. There's efforts on a national level to make these unenforceable across the country. It was about 2 years ago. The Federal Trade Commission tried to make non-competes completely unenforceable, but they failed, and it's still left to states. And these clauses can make it very difficult to continue working and living in your community upon termination. They can severely restrict your next best option. So before you sign, make sure you pull up the map and think really, really hard about what this non-compete clause means for your next best option, for what you're able to do if this job doesn't work out. About 50% of you will change jobs in the first 4 years. That was the most recent research that I saw. Okay. Coin flip chance you're leaving this job in 4 years that are terminating you. You're probably terminating them, frankly, but some way this job is probably 50% chance it's ending. So the odds of you needing to understand your exit strategy is very, very high. A typical non-compete clause might say that for 1 to 2 years post-termination, you cannot practice medicine within, let's say, a 10-mile bubble of this particular work location. Okay. Non-competes can be drafted in a ton of different ways. They could prevent you from working within a particular county. They could be a bubble from multiple different work locations. It really just depends. But this is an example of 10 miles around Madison, Wisconsin. I like to use Madison, Wisconsin as an example because 10 miles around Madison, everything out here is cornfields until you like get to Milwaukee. So 10 miles might as well be 50. Not like there's, especially if you're a specialist, you know, you're an interventional radiologist. Like I don't think they're doing any IRADs, you know, anywhere between Madison and Milwaukee. I don't think so. But even a smaller 10-mile bubble around Madison could be very, very punitive for you. Okay. There are ways to negotiate non-competes. You can ask for the length of time to be shorter. You can ask for the geographic restriction to be smaller. You can ask for the non-compete to be made unenforceable if they terminate you without cause. And I've negotiated like 50 different ways. Okay. But big picture on exit strategy, there's a number of other points here. We're going to run short on time. But you need to understand what are all of the financial and legal penalties associated with leaving a job and have a plan to pay those, to resolve those. I want everyone to have a plan to never feel trapped in their job because of the contract. Okay. But for next steps, okay, one more point. Start 18 to 9 months out. Okay. Please don't start like 3 to 6 months away from finishing training. You can definitely start more than 18 months out with your interview process. Okay. In our firm, we have 4 lawyers, 3 are married to physicians. All of us with our partners or their spouses started this process more than 18 months out. When you do this all day, you realize how valuable it is to start very early and have a lot of time to evaluate, to consider multiple opportunities before you sign. So last piece, I highly encourage you to get help as you navigate this next step. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of money on the line. And employers are going to tell you that these things are standard and boilerplate and non-negotiable, but they are negotiable. Okay. I have thousands of files here that start off with the employer saying, this is standard and boilerplate and we don't negotiate. And then they negotiated things. Okay. It is a sales tactic that is very, very successful unless y'all like really think about it and take your time and still ask for the things that are important. Okay. So please don't stop when the employer says it's all standard boilerplate and non-negotiable. I'll tell you that is not true. Some hold their ground, sure, but that is not true across the board. I'd love a follow on Instagram. We have an Instagram profile at Physician Contracts. Maybe we can stick it in the chat, but we go on and post tidbits about physician contracts and negotiation points. So that's a good way to stay connected with us. But I'd also love an invite to your residency program. We do in-person or we do virtual presentations for residency programs. We come talk about the specialty specific things that you're likely to experience as you navigate physician contracts. And we do about 200 of these a year. We love doing them. So we love an invite to your program, even if it is just your residency program, if it's just your class, we can do it virtually over like a lunch or whatever. Would love to be invited back, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And let me just open up and see if we have any questions. None right now, but one thing I'm curious to know is where is most of our attendees tonight living? Are we more West Coast, Central, East Coast, just so we can maybe tailor it a little bit to where you guys are? And then second, Michael, what would be one question you would advise everyone to maybe ask their employer or have in the back of their mind as a negotiation question when that opportunity comes up?
Yeah, I would say there's one for each of those 3 points, right? On work obligations, what is the most exciting thing they promised you during the interview process? Okay, think about that for a moment. Is that reflected in the contract? If it's not, then that thing was probably aspirational and not really something that you can rely upon moving forward. Okay. On comp, they often put a lot of emphasis, employees put a lot of emphasis on base salary and signing bonus because they know y'all love those things. Okay. But let's make sure you take a moment, take a beat, and look at the comp per work RVU rates, the future compensation per volume rates, and get some help evaluating those. So we have access to macro level compensation data. We use MGMA. There's a number of other sources, but there's a lot of data out there that speaks to what is normal for a pediatrician working in a hospital setting in the Midwest versus, changing those variables. And you need to know what the macro level data says about your specialty, because the employers are looking at that data as well to make comp decisions about what to offer you. So you should also have the same data that they are looking at. We do that in the firm. Okay. And then on exit strategy, a lot of folks will way underestimate the odds that they're going to leave their first job. You're going to be very, very excited about your first job, hopefully. Okay. But highly likely you're going to be very excited. But realistically, coin flip chance you're leaving in 4 years. So pay close attention to exit strategy. Spend a little bit more time during your contract evaluation, negotiation process, thinking about negotiating the most problematic pieces of exit down. But that would be my 3 points.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you again, Michael, for being here. If questions flow through later when you have to leave, again, we'll direct them to you. You could also reach Michael again on social medias, physician contracts. And next up, we're going to have Kat talk more about student loans. So thank you for putting that in the chat, Michael.
Thank you.
I was talking on mute. Okay, I can be heard now?
Yes.
Awesome. So my name's Kat. Me and my husband's best friend, he's a radiation oncologist, and I want to tell his story a bit because how you manage your student loans, maybe contract negotiations a bit out, but managing student loans is very near, right? Very near, as in when you go to residency, you're going to make some money and you're going to have an obligation to pay, and you might have a huge balance relative to what you earn in residency. So how do we manage that? And how do we manage our student loans knowing that we may have a much higher, not that we might, but we will have a much higher income in several years in the future. And many people don't know if they're going to stay in public sector or go private practice, right? So there's a lot of moving variables. And how do you manage your student loans at this time? So I decided to take a little walk in your shoes and think, if I were you, how would I build my plan in terms of paying faster or paying less? And I'm going to use my really good friend's example because I think it really applies. So in residency, a big mistake a lot of residents make is they're like, I don't have to worry about it for now. And they don't take action, as in maybe they put it in forbearance. They don't strategically think, what should I do with my loans? They pay some kind of minimum payment. They're not paying attention what plan I put it into. They just figure out, how do I pay less? And July, I'm going to talk a little bit about the changing laws and how being strategic about what plan you're thinking about matters more than ever, just because there's going to be this July a new plan that's entering that we really don't want people to volunteer to put themselves in, especially since you took out your loans before July of 2026. You don't want to enroll in the new plans that were created under the One Big Beautiful Bill. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, of course, I'm happy to answer questions, but next steps, like how can we help you? If you need somebody to bounce some thoughts on what my best course of action is. And of course, we also manage all the paperwork for our clients, including public service loan forgiveness. We'll file with your employers. We'll handle all the paperwork. So, and of course, we'll advise you. And now being tax season, if any of you are married or about to get married, how you file your taxes will impact your student loan payments if you go into an income-driven plan. So that's a big part I wanted to mention today too, because we're coming into tax filing season right now. So let me dive in. Okay, so a lot of people, and we all have heard, right? Do I pay my student loans like my hair is on fire as quickly as I can, like scrounge every penny, eat ramen, it doesn't matter, just put towards my student loan. I don't make that much money right now, but I have a high balance. I'm just going to pay it off as quickly as possible, right? That's strategy one. Everybody knows about that strategy because that's a very common strategy. Like refinance, get the lowest rate and pay it like your hair is on fire, okay? The second one is actually, and I know Michael and I were talking before this webinar started, is pay as little as possible. And once you pay a certain number of payments, that is if you're public servants, 120 payments, and you get loan forgiveness, right? And I think this is the most underestimated strategy, specifically for higher earner medical workers, because they're like, well, I can afford to pay it. And they just don't think about public service loan forgiveness because nobody projects to them what the possible forgiveness amounts are. So my friend who's a physician, and then I'm going to talk, how do you identify the strategy for yourself? Well, because he's been friends with me when he came out of residency, we put him in the right income-driven plans. And because when you come out of residency, you earn nothing or very little the prior years, you can literally get zero or near $0 payments for 3 years. For the next 2 to 3 years, you can get zero or near $0 payments for the next 3 years. By the way, that all count towards what is loan forgiveness, right? Whoops, 1 second. Let me go to the loan forgiveness slide. It's right here. So this loan forgiveness slide, if you make 3 years of zero or near $0 payments, these will count towards loan forgiveness as long as you meet 2 conditions. You file into an income-driven plan and you file the right employment certification forms, right? You will get these 2 to 3 years of zero or near $0 payments counted towards 120 payments. So if you think about it, you need to make 20 payments, that's 10 years. If you get 3 years at $0, then you only need to make really 7 years worth of payments. My friend is now a year out from forgiveness, and he's going to get near $400,000 of student loans forgiven. And I say that because when the pandemic hit after residency, he saved up a chunk of $179,000. He's like, this interest rate is killing me. I'm just going to pay them off. Well, then the interest rates on houses drop to like 2-point-something%, right? And he goes, oh my God, I just used my mortgage down payment, my entire down payment. And he lives, just for context, in Washington State, where the house is right outside of Seattle, where you're not going to get a house for, at that time you're not going to get a house under $700,000 where he was living. So he needed that down payment money. So at that time, because again, he's friends with me, we got him a refund from the Department of Treasury. He got this check back for that amount. And he was able to make a down payment. And then that's how he's gotten such a large forgiveness amount, because he now retroactively owes that payment. But he is getting all the right paperwork filed so that he can get his 120 payments and get to loan forgiveness. So if anybody has questions on what is loan forgiveness, how you get it, please do ask me. Happy to answer that. Okay. So let me just go back now though to the 2 strategies, right? Pay as quick as possible and get loan forgiveness. How do you know which one to follow? So I have kind of rules of thumbs I'm going to talk to. Okay. So I'll come back to this part later, but sorry, I'm using my pointer and it's going back and forth a little. Okay. So pay quickly. So this is how I think of when we think of how do we think of who to advise to pay quickly. Number one, I always tell people, before you make a gut decision, like I'm just going to pay it as quickly as possible because my mom told me debt is bad. Okay, whatever the our teachings, how we grew up, let's just put that aside for 1 minute and let's think with numbers, right? So it's always good, regardless of what decision you make, to understand what are the rules of thumb and what are the numbers. So that's really important, right? Like if you take a job in private practice and you earn $50,000 more, but you're foregoing $200,000 of loan forgiveness, is it possible you could even go to private practice and try it out, come back and get loan forgiveness? The 120 payments does not have to be consecutive, okay? And that's exactly what my friend did. He went to private practice for a year and realized that he was giving up $400,000 of loan forgiveness. Had he just gone back to that teaching hospital, which he ended up doing, and now is 1 year out, but he got good experience, learned a lot, and will likely go back after his loans are forgiven, right? So it does have a huge bearing, because maybe getting $30,000 more in private practice just isn't going to make up for the loan forgiveness you'll make. That's a huge consideration. So how do you think about paying quickly? I always tell residents, don't make a decision in residency if you're going to pay quickly or not, because you just don't know what job you're ultimately going to accept. And a lot of residency programs are with either nonprofit hospital systems. Over 80% of hospital systems are nonprofit. They might be with, various organizations, institutions, whatever, that have some type of nonprofit affiliation. In which case you can very easily enroll into income-driven plans and even get that time counted towards public service loan forgiveness. There's even private groups that have affiliations and with public clinics to even allow, especially mental health professionals, to allow people to also still get public service loan forgiveness. So I just always say, in residency, try not to make that decision yet. Just know that these rules of thumbs are basically, because you don't know what your future earnings and what you're going to decide eventually, the pay quickly or pay less strategy really depends ultimately on what income and what that employment is. But while you're in residency, the rules of thumb essentially will not say pay it quickly, but the pay quickly is your stable job, income, private sector, and you have less debt than income. So if I use numbers, let's say you earn 120,000, right? Which is probably a little less in residency, but you have less debt than income, which a lot of people with MDs have more debt than income in residency. So they don't fall under the rules of thumb of pay quickly, because they just don't earn enough. And most residency programs are affiliated with nonprofits, which means they don't meet the rules of thumb of pay quickly. Okay, now what is the pay less rules of thumb? It's based on employer and based on income. So if you work for a nonprofit, you work for government, like some people go work for the VA. There are some government entities that have healthcare, that provide healthcare as well, right? If you work for nonprofit government, it could be government, federal, county, state, does not matter. Or it's based on income. So again, coming back to this income, if you have significantly more income than debt, and you're like, I could just tighten my belt. I got a great scholarship for medical school. I can tighten my belt. I only have $100,000. I could pay it off. I want to do that during residency and have the freedom to not have to worry about debt. That's great. But again, I would also think about it not just from employer, but also your debt to income. And this matters for mortgage as well, right? Because if you have a significant debt relative to income, so for example, if you have 1.5 times the amount of debt relative to income, like that's definitely a point, which means like if you have 150 of debt and you earn $100,000, you're not likely in a position to accelerate and pay quickly, because your debt to income is just simply too high. You're going to really not be able to afford many other things in life if you decide to do that. And of course, I can explain how this connects to mortgage too. But essentially, I can't see the bottom of my slides for some reason. Kayla, I don't know. So the course of action, right? I know I'm talking to the top. I can't really see. Let me, here. Okay. It does go away move away. Okay. Excuse me. So if you know, for example, let's say you go pay less now, but after residency, you're going to go into private practice. You're going to make a significant amount of money. So this is what I would do. What I would do is I would obviously, you can make lump sum payments and pay it off, especially if you know you're going to go to private practice after residency, right? Obviously, you'd save money on interest. If you know you're going to be a public servant, well, from residency, I would start every year certifying your employer and entering into income-driven plans. This connects now to the One Big Beautiful Bill plans that I'm going to tell you. Again, while you're in residency, you don't have to use 2025 income based on your tax filings of this year. You can use income from 2024 even to file. If you have very low to zero income, that means you can get a $0 payment or close to $0 payment right now for this first year's a payment and get it counted towards public service loan forgiveness, like I said again. And then this is a big hack. So I know I'm saying a lot, but if you remember one thing from what is coming out of my mouth, I want this one thing to be it. Michael talked about how likely you are to change jobs. When you're between jobs, if you're a public servant, you want to file your public service loan forgiveness paperwork again, as well as your income-driven paperwork again, because you can get an additional year of $0 payments that as soon as you start at that new employer, they will certify that time. So every time you're between jobs, let's say residency, you have 2 to 3 years of $0 payments and you will change jobs twice in 10 years. That's an additional 2 years of $0 payments. So you could literally get away paying your student loans for 5 years. That's how you can get hundreds of thousands of dollars of loan forgiveness. There's another thing that I'm talking about now with a tax filing time that I really want to mention. If you are married or thinking about getting married, if you have a significant amount of debt, which a lot of MDs do, and they're marrying somebody with no debt or little debt that still earns significant income or even a moderate amount of income, let's say it's 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, you should consider filing your taxes separately. Again, we're not CPAs, but we understand the penalties. We're not going to tell you in terms of tax, but we will tell you in terms of your student loans, what your payments will be if you file jointly with a spouse with no student debt making significant income. They're going to count their income towards your payments. So you want to consider filing separately. Again, we can give you the student loan numbers for you to talk to a CPA. And we have those numbers when you consult with us as well. I know it's tax season. Again, file your paperwork between jobs to get $0 every time, 2 to 3 times, plus while in residency. You will pay your student loans for 5 out of 10 years, and it will be an easy feat to do, right? So let me talk about, of course, you could do all this on your own. All the forms are available online. We can also help you do it, just so you understand. We will do all your employer certifications for you. We will also assign you a student loan advisor who will guide you on what are the tax filing separate penalties. And they can also tell you, if you enroll in zero, what your mortgage uplift and affordability looks like, especially if you're moving to a very expensive area, like outside of Seattle, and you need that extra money when you're a resident, right? We can tell you the mortgage uplift. We can enroll all the paperwork in your residency program so you can get the time counted, and we can get you into the right repayment plan. So that's what makes us different than if you do it yourself. Obviously, you can do all of it yourself. And there's also services, of course, like other consultancies, like Student Loan Planner, other services out there. They will advise you, but they will not manage your paperwork, and that makes us slightly different. Okay. Now, one final thing, and then I know my time is about to be up, right? I don't know if I have like a minute left or so. The One Big Beautiful Bill updates. It's really important that you don't choose the new repayment assistance program because it's not going to be 30 years because you'll most likely be public servants. But the reason I say not to choose that plan is because they can stretch out to 30 years. It would honestly be good to calculate a bit of what the payment difference between income-based versus repayment assistance versus payee, which is a program you all can still enroll in. And it also depends on if you're carrying undergrad debt. So that will determine what the best plan is. But again, we advise people to choose plans that will not likely let the government pick for you if you do nothing or sit on it, right? Which you won't if you're a public servant and a resident anyways. But we're advising people against repayment assistance, at least if they're older borrowers, as in they've graduated before 2026, you're graduating in 2026, but have taken out the debt, before 2026, you're considered an old borrower. You don't have to be automatically considered for repayment assistance. So we like to let people know that prior plans are possible, including pay as you earn, which will help reduce your payments more significantly, and you won't be at risk of being in a 30-year plan if you decide to go to private practice. Okay, that's a one big beautiful bill update. And then I'm just gonna go to, mortgage qualification. We help get the docs for mortgage closed. That's really it. After we do your paperwork. And if you work with Kayla, like, we'll get all the documents for her to help if you do try to close on a house. You could look up our reviews online, consistently rated 4.8 stars by Google, on Trustpilot. And of course, we have a few links. I put here a tiny URL if you want to book a consult with one of our advisors. And then I put Kayla's calculator, which I think she has available here. It will just estimate what your student loan reduction will do to your mortgage qualification. And you could just go sign up for a free plan on our website. And if you're, and also at this link, one final pitch, and then I'm done, is there is a chat at myloansense.com/see, like, it's a tool Kayla put in here. There is a chat. Even though it's an AI chat that comes up, a human advisor monitors that. So if you go in with a very specific question, like, I'm confident I'm going into private practice, blah, 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 what should I consider? You can chat with it, even if it doesn't give you a response you like, which it does oftentimes give responses you like. A human will review it within 24 business hours, and we get back to people with real answers if we felt like the chat did not do a sufficient job. So you're welcome to chat us there. You're welcome to go to our website, and you're also welcome to book a session if you so choose. Thank you very much. We're on YouTube and Instagram as well. We release content every week on YouTube. So if you so would like to follow it, at Catalina Kai. That's just my first name and KAI. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Kat, we actually have two questions for you. The first one is regarding PSLF. Would it be possible to enter RAP first and then transition into IBR in July of 2028, since both are IBR plans? If so, am I correct in understanding that we would be able to apply for it and certify PSLF while on RAP and continue to do so once we switch to IBR?
Why? What is the advantage of doing that? So my question back is, you probably are pay as you earn qualified, and you should go and consider pay as you earn, because they are trying to move everybody out of old plans. Obviously, IBR is the only congressional approved plan, but if you're on SAVE, you're in pay as you earn, you're in other things, they're going to try to move you out of those plans into RAP. We don't know, the Department of Ed sets new rules all the time. I don't want to tell you something and then in 2028, they're like, nope, we're moving everybody into this plan. We don't know what's going to happen in 2028. So there's risk that you could go in that plan and they say you can't move out, right? So I would consider pay as you earn. That's still an option if, when you originated your loans, is pay as you earn qualified. There's no advantage in going into RAP and then moving out of it. There's no advantage to that. At least that I'm aware of, there's only risk. Because we don't know what the government's going to decide in 2028, right? We just don't know what they're going to decide.
Got it. Another question for you is a little bit more on the topic about taxes, how to file taxes to ensure that you are paying zero or near zero debt payments for 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so that so here's real quick. Your tax filing status is, we have a tax filing calculator. It's completely free on our website. So if you go to Kayla's calculator, go sign up, and you put in your and your spouse's income, put in your student loans, we will give you a marriage tax calculator for free. But the gist of the marriage tax situation is, just to be really brief, is let's say you go into residency, you earn $80,000, and you are married to someone who has no debt, and and this is extreme that they have no debt. They might have some debt, right? But I'm just using an extreme example. They earn $80,000 and they have no student loan debt. What filing jointly will do will take their $80,000 to pay your debt. to make your monthly debt payment. So if you want to not count their debt, you have to file separately. Again, I'm not giving you tax advice because I'm not telling you exactly what your tax penalty is. But for a lot of people, the tax penalty is significantly less than what their payments will be. Does that make sense? So that's why we tell people to at least get an understanding. Your tax filing status has less to do with you getting zero. It's you get zero because you're using prior year's income when you earn very little. And if you're between jobs, you're earning zero. So if you file at that time, your payment's going to be close to zero, depending on what program you're in. And if you're in RAP, they don't have zero, they have $10, but still that's pretty darn close, right? So if you have questions about taxes, go to our free calculator on our website. But also, if you have 6 figures of debt and there's like a chance you're going to be paying hundreds of dollars more each month, our consult is $249. I just say that because you would literally save in 1 month, you know, what our consult fee is. So I'd advise you if you're in that situation where your spouse doesn't have much debt and has income, I would consider talking to somebody on my team. And that link is tinyurl.com/MDLS book, which is MDLS is for Loan Sense book.
Awesome. We do have 1 or 2 other questions. First one part was
I'll try to be quick to respect other people's time.
No problem. Debt to income ratio. Are you talking about income? Oops, where did it go? Are you talking about income pre or post taxes? That's typically pre-tax, I'm assuming.
So it's based on AGI, adjusted gross income.
Okay. And then the second question is,
so are they talking about mortgage though? I'm sorry, debt to income. Is that more of you, a Kayla, you question rather than a me question?
It sounds like it's more mortgage, which is why I think it's free. But that was different from what your perspective is. But the second question to this is, if you're not sure if you're going to end up in a public or private sector, they match anesthesia. Is there a certain amount of interest on your loans you would be recommended trying to pay down while pursuing PSLF? Not sure if this is more a cat question.
Okay, so this is coming. Yeah. So let me just say something. If you know you're going PSLF, there's no value in accelerating your payments because you could be putting that money into other investments. And I know Janice is going to probably be talking about, if you know you're going to get your loans forgiven and you're going to get the right advice and do the paperwork properly to get forgiveness, there's no value in accelerating your payments because that just means less money you're getting forgiven. If you're not sure you're going to be public service, that's a different question. But if you're like 90% sure, there's really no need to eat ramen and crunch your budget right now when you're making less. Basically trying to, if you're PSLF, you're going to get your debt forgiven. There's really no point in, unless you're like, I might go private, then it's a different conversation. But if you know your PSLF, there's really no point in accelerating your payments because that just means less forgiveness. Like I said, these programs were literally invented for people like you. There's no income maximum requirement. You could still be in these programs. It's because it draws people to stay in medicine. And when the One Big Beautiful Bill tried to put income limits and try to make it so you all didn't have access to this, people fought it, because there's a lot of interest to have these programs available, even to higher earners. So I would take full advantage, and you guys sacrifice a lot to provide the services you do, and you should take advantage of these benefits,
Awesome. Thank you, Kat. If any other questions come in, I know you have a hard stop. We'll definitely get them directed and connected with you. They do have your book link here as well. So we will continue with our presentation. Next up, we do have Janice talking more about financial planning.
Hello, good evening, everyone. If you missed the intros in the beginning, I'm Janice Broden. I am a wealth management advisor in California. I saw a bunch of people in the chat say that they were in California. So hello to my West Coasters. And congratulations. Obviously, if you're on this webinar, it's probably a very exciting time in your life. So I know we're all trying to jam in a bunch of information in this webinar. So I know we were all laughing. We're like, how do I fit everything I need in like a 20-minute segment? So there's going to be some stuff that I'm going to keep very, very high level for the sake of today. Happy to answer, of course, any questions afterwards, but I will also be including some follow-up information and like a QR code and stuff to a link. I'm happy to, do any one-on-one consultations with people today as well. So a couple of things that I just want to kind of start off with is while financial planning, I view it as something really exciting to be doing for our clients, we first have to realize different industries, different occupations, different life stages have different challenges ahead of theirs. So, you're all embarking on a very respectable career path, but we do know that on average, there's higher student loan debt that you're also dealing with. So hopefully a lot of Kat's input was helpful, but also your earning years begin a little bit later. So with the physicians that I work with, I know sometimes they feel like, gosh, I'm behind and I'm trying to catch up. But you all know the beauty is that, you have the ability to make a really well-deserved income in the long run, but it just takes some time getting used to, maybe how to budget and manage your funds as they start coming in, since it's completely different, right? Once you're officially working full time versus while in medical school and, during training and all of that. Doctors that I work with are probably the most difficult to get a hold of. And that's because you're busy many, many hours of the day doing what you're an expert at. And so we know that financial planning in general is something that people have the best intention to want to do, but it gets put on the back burner because we've got a million other things that we're trying to deal with. So especially if, you are in private practice or, running your own business, or even if you're not, but your hours are usually pretty hectic and crazy. So what we encourage people to do is, hey, let's take you off the treadmill of life for like 45 minutes here and there, just like you're all doing today. And then we put you back on it and you have a team like ours that's helping you manage all of your finances behind the scenes. I'm going to talk a little bit more about risk management today, because that is what I would say are some of the foundational pieces of putting a proper financial plan in place. So one of the first things, especially at this stage, I know sometimes when I'm talking to people while in residency, it's like, well, I'll deal with that once I'm done. And I'm like, this is the perfect time to start building the right habits with your money. As I've worked with people over the years, human nature is, as we make more money, what do? We end up spending more money. And so if you don't build the right habits when your income is lower, it can be really hard when you're making $500,000, $750,000, 7-figure plus to all of a sudden have really good spending habits and saving habits. So general rule of thumb, I mean, anyone who's ever taken maybe any sort of, business 101, accounting 101, finance 101 class ever in undergrad, this is a pretty common theory to follow. But essentially, I would say right now at this stage, I would worry more about figuring out with stipends or however you're going to be getting compensated, what's coming in and what's going out. Are you moving states? What's the cost of living going to look like? And so just really getting very clear on what are my fixed expenses, right? So your essential expenses, whatever it costs to keep a roof over your head, turn the lights on, food on the table, right? Basic needs, through training. What are just those fixed expenses that you need on a monthly basis? Typically, you can see on the slide here, it's about 60% of what's coming in should be able to cover, right, your fixed and essential expenses. 20% is to go and live life still, right? So 20% I call is your like personal allowance to not forget to have some maybe happy hours or go out to dinner with friends here and there and any extra free hours that you get. And then the other 20% really can and should be going towards any saving and investing goals that you have. And that's usually what I'm sitting down with folks and helping them put together as far as, even some retirement strategies, some, starting to save now for that down payment, things of that nature, so that when you're ready and done with training, that you feel good about the cushion that you have, and really building up an appropriate emergency fund. An emergency fund, typically, you want about at least 3 months worth of your expenses put away. Perfect world would be closer to 6 months if you eventually are running your own business, have a private practice, practice, you probably want closer to 6 to 9 months. While you guys, over the next couple of years here, I would say at least 1 to 2 months or so is a good place to start. So don't feel like you have to go build that overnight, but figure out now in this next stage, what are some of your fixed expenses going to be, and just start, putting a little bit away, so that at least 1 to 2 months of a cushion gives you a little bit of that peace of mind. Okay, but I want to talk about the risk management, as I mentioned, a little bit more about protecting your biggest asset. Most people think that their biggest asset ends up being, items that they own, right? Once we have a mortgage, as we're, have larger investment accounts. But what I've learned over the years and actually being in this industry is someone's biggest asset is their ability to earn their paycheck. And we don't spend enough time understanding how important it is to protect that. Working with physicians has actually been something that I've realized. Hopefully, maybe this is the first time you're hearing about this, but there's a pretty good chance that it's not, because physicians usually come to us and they're like, I was told in school, that I should get disability insurance. And I'm like, I wish all industries and occupations taught people that was extremely important to have in place. But I do know people in the medical world are told early and often that this is an important part of their financial planning. And it's because so much of what you do, some of you are going to be in specialties that take a lot of physical, right, parts of you to dedicate to your job. But a lot of it is just, right, mentally and emotionally pretty draining as well. And all those things can impact our ability to do our everyday job. God forbid there's some sort of curveball that comes our way. So making sure that you're prepared. The things to protect you financially are from a disability, from a premature death, and from long-term care expenses later in the future. Right now, I'd say probably looking at disability and emergency fund would be like the number one priority at your stage. But I'm going to talk through why it's important to start taking a look at some of the others as well. So there's a 1 in 4 chance that employees will be disabled for 3 months or more, essentially during their working years. And I actually have seen some of the stats go up to about 1 in 3, which basically means, even just with the hosts on here today, right, there's a pretty good chance that 1 to 2 of us will experience some sort of disability in our working years. And I think another reason medical professionals know and understand why this is important, think about what you guys will be seeing on a daily basis. So a lot of people are like, yep, I see people, right, have to come to us and they were completely healthy and then got diagnosed with something completely unexpectedly. And a lot of times disability claims aren't just for like physical ailments. A lot of times it is just, right, you look perfectly healthy on the outside, but it could be something on the inside. It could even be mental health related. And what's really, really unique about the financial planning industry, we specifically have disability insurance that, residents and medical school professionals essentially can get. The reason that's unique is most other industries and occupations that I work with, when they're applying for disability insurance, you have to have proof of income. And if someone's a business owner running their own private practice of some sort, you have to have a couple of years of tax returns. But for people in your field, they actually say, hey, you're in school right now. We're going to allow you to apply for, $2,500 of a monthly benefit without having to prove your income right now. You can even go up to like an $8,000 monthly benefit if you're in residency and things like that. So that is a huge opportunity and advantage that I'd say any medical professional should be looking into, because there's really no other industry or occupation that allows people to get approved for something that'll protect your future income before even having to prove a lot of your future income. So another thing I'm going to touch on just very briefly, again, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer that maybe separately or one-on-one, because you're all going to have very specific things to your case based on like benefits that are getting offered to you at this next stage. But disability insurance that's offered through your employers, it's a great benefit to have. So that would be one thing I'd absolutely start looking into, is any benefits that you're getting, how much disability is offered. There's short-term disability and there's long-term disability. They're all defined completely different, by the way. I look at people's benefits packages all the time. Short-term disability can be defined as 4 weeks, and I've seen it defined up to 6 months, where long-term disability can be considered kicking in at the 8-week mark, or it doesn't even kick in until the 366th day of maybe being out on a disability. But the other thing with work benefits is that it can be capped. And in your line of work, there's a pretty good chance that you will be making over, you can see annual compensation here on the slide, and there is a pretty good chance that you'll get to a point where you're making over these thresholds. And so not even 60% of your pay would be covered. So the most common benefit we see is 60% of your gross income is protected. God forbid you were to go out on a disability claim. People in my line of work will help people in your profession supplement the gap that work doesn't offer. So pretty standard, you get 60%. We help people supplement a private policy that, you know, could cover up to 40%. It's important to also look into, is this benefit tax-free for you? It might still be taxable. So all those things matter. But if you just look on the slide here, just as an example, right? If annual compensation is at 80K, you get the 60%, okay, great. But look, as we go farther to the right, you know, if it's capped at, you know, $8,000 a month, as you can see here, you might actually now start dropping, right? That up to 350K, well, only 34% of your income is actually protected. So if you make too much, I always say that's a good problem to have, but really important to make sure that you're looking at some sort of policy, even outside of your work benefits, to protect your full income as much as you possibly can. Okay, a couple of other things, and I'm spending a little bit more time on this, but it's, again, because it's so crucial for people in your line of work. Not all insurance policies are designed equally. So there used to be hundreds of companies that offer disability insurance. We're now down to about 12 that even offer it, and probably 5 to 6 that do a great job in the medical market. So there are different ways to define what a partial disability means, what a total disability means. So these are the types of things that, like, reading the fine print matters, or when sitting down with a licensed financial professional to be able to ask them these questions. I'll just give you a quick example. A partial disability maybe could be defined as, you know, you can't do, clearly, right, a portion of your job, but if you could still do another part of it, then, hey, the insurance company might say, you can still work, you're fine. So maybe think of like a surgeon, right, who's spending most of their day physically performing surgeries, and maybe another portion of their job is more like patient consultation. Well, an insurance policy could say, well, okay, you broke both your wrists, you can't perform surgery for, you know, the next, I don't know, 6 to 8 months, but you can still do consultation, so we're not going to pay out the claim because you could still do a part of your job. Or, hey, we're going to pay out some of the claim, but only partially, which is still better than nothing. But understanding those definitions will make a difference on what type of policy you might want to look into having. Where some companies will at least say, it's a little bit more gray. It's like, well, if you can prove that it's a substantial part of your job, then we will approve that claim as being a total disability. So little nuances, but that stuff does matter, and of course does make a difference. All right. Other things to think about is there's elimination periods. So while you're evaluating different options through work benefits or through private policies as well, like I mentioned, short-term disability, long-term disability, those all kind of mean a couple different things depending on the insurance company that's offering it or what group plan they have. So also understanding, okay, what's the elimination period? Very common that it's about 90 days, 12 weeks, something kind of in that range. And how long will the benefits be paid? I've seen disability policies designed to pay out for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or all the way up to retirement years. I know I have my own disability insurance to cover me until age 67, God forbid something were to happen. So of course, the shorter the benefit period, the cheaper the premium. But again, I'd say most of my physician clients are like, now, if something happens and I can't earn this income that I'm used to, I'd like to make sure that I can still pay out up until retirement years, and I can still fund my retirement and things of that nature. So And then, of course, here it says consider the company behind the contract. It is pretty important to look at the stability of these different financial firms and insurance companies. What are their financial strength ratings? How long have they been in business, so that you can have that peace of mind that they've got your back while you're busy, again, focusing on what you're an expert at, and let the insurance company, right, be an expert at what they do. So do your research, do your due diligence. Don't be afraid to ask questions on those types of details. Okay, a little bit of a different note, but this would be something else that I'm just going to touch on for now, of life insurance considerations. In the insurance world, everything that you get approved for premium-wise is based on age and health. And so the younger you are and the healthier you are, the better your rates will be. And so a lot of times people come to me, say, like, at first they don't want the disability insurance, and then they call me a year later and like, remember that disability stuff you told me about? I think I want it. And my first question is, why? What happened? Because people don't ever want to get this stuff until they realize that they need it. And same thing with life insurance. All of a sudden someone gets diagnosed with something and then they're like, oh my gosh, I've got a mortgage and a family and I want to make sure they're taken care of, but it might be too late to get approved for some of these things. So same thing, group benefits often offer some, basic life insurance coverage. I can tell you to this day, I've never looked at someone's work benefits and said, yep, you're fully taken care of. It's a great added bonus and benefit to have, but having a policy that can follow you no matter who your employer is, again, you go private practice or not, like Michael was saying in the beginning, right? I forget even what he said the statistics were, but how often you'll even change jobs in the first 4 years. A lot of your benefits that you have will not follow you. So owning some of your own personal policies can make a really big difference for your long-term planning. So if you know at some point you do want to own a home, that you're probably going to have a family, that you'd want to make sure funds are covered in the future for children, God forbid something happens, or making sure, especially if you have private student loans, that those could be paid off. That's like, that alone is an important reason to make sure you've got enough life insurance now. And again, while you are young and healthy, because every day that goes by, the insurance company assumes you're a day older and a day less healthy. So those are things that I would encourage you to think more about, or again, feel free to ask questions around. We don't have enough time today to go into all the different types of life insurances that exist, but two basic ones you can see on the screen here. There's term life insurance. You can usually get a pretty high death benefit for a pretty affordable or cheap premium, if you will. But think of it like renting or leasing a policy. So there's a term to it. And if you don't pass away within that time frame, the policy goes away. Really good to have while you're in your peak earning years. But you might not need it or need as much later on in life. Whole life insurance works a little bit differently, but it does last your whole life. So you actually can't outlive the policy. Really great for estate planning and legacy planning. And you can build a cash value inside of it. So we usually help people understand the differences and which one might make most sense into your plan or based on what your goals are. Long-term care. Again, most of you, I'm assuming this isn't something that you're going to need right now. I got myself insured with long-term care in my 20s just to lock in some really good rates and have a lifetime benefit of it. These numbers actually on here are even fairly outdated because today in California, again, I know there's a lot of California folks on the call, it's costing people about $120,000 per year just to pay for long-term care expenses. And you'll see it a lot, right, in your line of work of people needing that. What I've also learned, I have my retirement income, I'm a certified professional in retirement income. And a lot of people are like, well, my wealthy clients, right, are like, well, I make a lot of money, I'm self-insured, I probably don't need some of these insurance policies. What we have found from different studies is that even if you have enough assets to cover long-term care expenses later on in life, or even like a disability, even in your working years, psychologically and emotionally, people don't want to tap into their own investments or assets to pay for a lot of these medical bills. And so if you had an insurance policy though, and you knew that you needed to go on claim, there's a better chance that you're going to tap into that insurance policy to help cover the cost. So it's almost more psychological than it is anything else, but it is way cheaper to pay for an insurance policy than to pay for a lot of these out of pocket. So the fact that this is saying, today it's around 112, I'd say it's a little bit higher than that, but you can see what the future cost is going to be. So I'd say I'm assuming most of us are right in a similar generation that will need to lock in your rates as soon as you can. Okay. We did another study that says 67% of medical professionals list retirement planning as their top financial concern. But again, you guys are going to be so busy that all of a sudden you'll wake up in 10, 15, 20 years and be like, oh my gosh, am I even on track for my retirement goals? So now is a really good time to, take a look at, okay, how old are you now? And understanding, and again, I don't have time to go to a full investment workshop right now, but we help people understand like just even putting a little bit away now will make a huge difference. And part of our job is to understand what are your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. So again, if you say, well, I want to make sure I'm in the position to buy a home by the time I'm, done or relocating, there might be certain types of accounts that we help you open that, could be a goal in the next couple of years versus, as you can see here, right, the difference of investor A, from age 25 to 65, invested a total of $240K. That was also just pretending they did $6K of an annual investment and, had $1 million by the time they were 65. And then you can kind of see the differences here of, only doing it from 25 to 40, still a little bit better. Or here's someone who waited until they were 40 to start investing and saving. So even while your income is lower, right, while in training, going back to that budget, seeing what's coming in, what's going out, even carving out a couple $100 into like a Roth IRA, things like that can make a huge difference down the road. And I know the ladies are going to talk a little bit more about, how you can actually get into home ownership, but even investing in a Roth IRA, there's some life qualifying events that you can actually use towards down payments and things like that once done with school. So just wanted to touch on that briefly there, but again, happy to go into more depth at another time. And then where should you put your money? So in anything that you're going to need to use money for in the next, I'd say 18 to 24 months, for sure should be in a liquid account. So checking account, high yield savings accounts, anything like that, emergency fund, like I mentioned before, all that should be in a very easily accessible type of account that if you needed the money tomorrow, you can go grab it and get it. Anything that you really think, I'm probably not going to need to touch this for the next 2, 3, 4 years, really should go into something more efficient, like a brokerage account, some sort of investment account, not necessarily a retirement account though, because you might be hit with penalties if you want to take the money out sooner. Those are very often types of accounts that we help people open when we know they want to buy a house in the next maybe 3 to 5 years or 7 to 10 years, so that your money can grow a little bit more efficiently when you're ready to put that down payment out there. And then anything that's long-term, so in our world, that's 10 plus years out, different types of accounts, of course, retirement planning, but I would say investing in real estate, another general long-term investment account. I mentioned that whole life insurance stuff earlier. That's actually a very unique way to kind of create some tax efficiency planning as well. So those are the types of things that we help physicians look through as well, of like, okay, what should be, stacked away right now for short-term, midterm, and then how do we also help your tax bill in a couple decades from now be a little bit more efficient. If you're just saving everything in an employer-sponsored 401k, you're going to be hit with RMDs in your 70s and can be paying millions in taxes, and we can help you start planning now to fund different types of vehicles so that when it comes time to take money out later on in life, you're not hit with a very shocking tax bill. So those are things that we help our physicians look through as well. Okay.
Really quick.
Yes.
So sorry. I know we're coming up on time. I did want to get one of the questions I was answered. Let me know when you maybe have 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up. That way we could get to it.
Sure. How many more minutes? Because I want to keep us on track too. Maybe like
two or three or something.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So, essentially, I'll finish up a couple more things here, and then I'll absolutely make sure I have time for the question that was asked. So, even this I might skip over for now, but find out overall benefits package that you're getting from these employers. Look at, are they offering 401ks, 403bs? If you're going to be working at a hospital, that's very, very common. Do they offer a Roth 401k? Is it just pre-tax? And then again, along with the disability and the life insurance, that's something that my team and I look at for people all the time too. So if you're like, I just need a second set of eyes to look at this benefits package, that's something that we're happy to do a consultation with. So I'll kind of skip over those for now. Yeah. So I would say, I mean, ultimately it's start budgeting now. You heard a little bit more about the student loans, protecting your income and your lifestyle. Earlier you can do it, the better. And a little bit goes a long way. So even starting, retirement plans now. I did include, I'll just leave this up here. Of course, work with a licensed financial professional to build a customized plan. Make sure that anyone you're sitting down with is doing full planning as well, kind of looking at your full picture of, again, the insurance policies, the investment strategy, and how do they kind of talk to each other. We need to make sure they're complementing one another. I'm going to leave this up here as well. My contact information is here. There is also a QR code that takes you directly to our calendar. So if you are curious for like a 30-minute consultation, feel free to scan that. So I'll pause there, Kayla. And then, what was the question that we got?
What question we have was, how do we know if we have enough life insurance if we're not married and have kids yet?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't have a crystal ball, so sometimes, right, that can be a little bit challenging. What we help our clients do is assess based on your goals, right? I call it napkin math, but I can kind of figure out like, okay, if we know you're making, starting out, okay, we're at 250K. We want at least 10 years of our income maybe protected if something were to happen. Before I was ever married or anything, I had mom and dad and sister as beneficiaries on life insurance policies because I was like, I don't have any kids or anyone to give it to. So life insurance policies can be edited and updated. The most important thing is just locking in insurability. So on average, usually we personalize the amount that people need, but I would say like a cookie cutter Googleable answer is people typically need anywhere from 10 to 20 times their income in life insurance. And more often than not, when we do our own math and back into it, it usually lands somewhere in that range. So if we know, well, I'm going to have a mortgage in the future, let's say, okay, that's $1 million. And again, I want to protect my income for at least a decade if something were to happen. Okay, well, let's call that at least 2 million on there. And then I want to make sure future kids could be covered and college tuition. I don't know, let's call it, maybe I have 2 kids, maybe that's, $500,000, boom, 3.5 million, right? Would be something that you need. And here's the good thing about insurance. You can always lower your need. It's a lot more difficult to increase it. So even right now, you might say, well, 3.5? I don't think I need that. You could lock in your insurability, get a really good rate for it. And then later on in life, you realize, I actually don't really need that. I probably only need 2 million. Cool. You call your financial professional, insurance agent, whoever wrote it for you. And you can say, hey, can we shave $1 million off the top of that? I really don't need that much. So you can always shave some off the top. It's a lot more difficult to say, well, I'm pretty young right now. I don't need that much. Maybe I'll just get 250. And then 3 years later, you're like, okay, now I need $1 million more. And now you have to go through underwriting and take a new medical and, do all of that all over again. So I'd say it's usually better to kind of swing for the fences, as we say, and then you can pull back if you realize you really don't need that much.
Awesome.
Yeah, good question.
I appreciate all of that. Great questions too. I know we are, in the later half in the home stretch coming up. So I just want to say thank you all for still staying on, sending in all those great questions. We have up next Zoe, who's going to be talking more about relocation and just really stuff you need to know, specifically going into new communities.
Thank you so much for that. I am going to get into the weeds, and I realize now too, like I put these slides together in a hurry, and this isn't just about home buying. This is just about relocating in general, considering renting, considering buying, how to weigh the pros and cons that come along with that. But also the home buying process is a big part of that, as well as leases and stuff like that. So we are going to focus a lot on the home buying portion of this today, but we'll also talk about the options of buying versus renting in certain communities. And I am going to harp on physician loans, which you're going to learn a lot about physician loans in just a little bit, but I'm going to talk a lot about like why it's important for your realtor to be involved in this community and in this profession as a specialty with their real estate, history, just because there's so many variables and nuances, state to state, lender to lender, institution to institution, that unless they are in this pretty heavily, it's easy to maybe miss out on a really good opportunity depending on where you are. But like she said, my name is Zoe Taylor. I'm a real estate in St. Louis. I was married to a physician and ran a pediatric practice for several years before I got into real estate. But the Organization of Moving Medicine Partners, I founded this just over 3 years ago. We are comprised of 85 real estate agents across the United States that are all married to physicians. And they met their physician spouses at all different stages. Some of them met in high school and some of them met, well into attending years. But a lot of us have a lot of lived experiences of relocating quite a bit. And so a lot of empathy for what each other have gone through. And we share a lot of our information and resources with one another to support each other in what we know and what we share with you guys as physicians that are moving their families across the country. So I'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, wherever you guys go, there's real estate agents in your area that probably some tend to work more with physicians than others. All the agents in our organization obviously do in their communities, but even where we don't have agents, if there's a hospital system there, there's typically a few realtors that are either trusted by the hospitals, partnered by the hospitals, that have that experience, that understand physician needs. Every specialty has a different need. Every phase of training has a different need. I know that if you're just matched, just doing this crazy, train relocation post-match into residency, this is probably one of the most stressful and chaotic times that you're going to be going through. If you haven't started the process yet into looking into what your decision is going to ultimately be, buy versus rent, where you're going to buy, who you're going to use, what lender, I highly recommend that you get started. The earlier you get started, the less stress you're going to have during this entire transition. So I just want to caveat that you're not too late. I mean, we're only like a few days in, but the earlier you get started, the absolute better, just so that you're not frantically trying to find something at the last minute that doesn't fit. So rent versus buy, this is probably one of the biggest questions. In some cities, obviously, I know a lot of you guys are in California, and there's some areas in California where it's just not necessarily a huge option to buy unless you have a partner or someone who's able to have a substantial income to supplement your own, or you have family that's going to help you, which absolutely does happen from time to time. Otherwise, the rental markets are there, and it's hard to find realtors that will assist you on rentals, because rentals are tough and they don't pay a lot of money and they consume a lot of time. So a lot of realtors kind of shy away from assisting too much on helping rentals. And every rental market and every city is different in how they approach things. For example, in St. Louis, there's not a lot of listings that show up on Zillow or the syndicated platforms that you would anticipate seeing rentals on. A lot of property management companies that own a lot of single family homes have their own in-house website that they list their listings on internally, and you have to go to each property management website to see what homes are available or when they're coming available. Same thing with apartment buildings. They are often not listed on Zillow if there are available rentals within apartment complexes. You have to actually go to Google, find the apartment complexes, get their phone number, go to their website, see what's available, or call their management company. So Zillow isn't always a good, reliable resource for finding a rental, because that's just not how it works. And that happens in a lot of cities. The other thing too with rentals is, if you do see something on Zillow right now, we're still in March. And a lot of you guys don't want to have to start paying for rent in a new city that you're moving to until the beginning of June, so that you can get settled before orientation. But anything that you see right now for rent, it is very unlikely that they are going to hold it vacant and extend your start date for your lease to June 1st. Most of them will require you to start your lease beginning of April. So it's a little tricky, because with renting, you almost do have to either wait a little bit until you're closer to time to when you need to start your lease date to start really honing in and looking, because you could be spinning your wheels right now calling and trying to get tours of those listings on Zillow, with them just like not even considering. So I would say the first question is like, would you consider a lease that would start June 1st, May 1st, whatever it may be that you're really trying to push for? And if they say no, you may need to consider that you do have an extra month rent that you have to pay before you get here, or you just wait. Another good option is just call the outgoing fellows and residents and see what they're leaving and see if there's anything that you can transition into. It's often a game of switch in this market for both homes that are selling and then homes that are for rent. I think all landlords are a little frustrated by this time of year, as are all outgoing residents and fellows, because the overlap is so annoying. They're not done with training until the end of June, and you guys all have start orientation June 15th. So like there's a 2-week imbalance of someone being homeless for just a little bit. And so we're always playing this like really funny game of like, who's moving out first? How are we going to get in? Do we like get a temporary rental on rotating rooms and then move in after our start date? So that is absolutely something that is considered and navigated around. Is to it's usually more or less the outgoing residents that will go ahead and move all of their furnishings to the new location that they're moving to. And while they're finishing up this final, month during June, they'll often sleep at a friend's house or go find a furnished finders or Airbnb to stay in temporarily so that the incoming intern can go ahead and find settle into their new home. That's typically how it works out, but you can definitely talk to the outgoing trainees to see what is coming available on the rental market. Now, when considering rent versus buy, there's a few different things. A lot of markets are dependent. Like I said, some are affordable, some are not. If you are in an affordable market, buy versus rent also is determined by how stable is that market historically over the last few years. Has it seen equity growth or equity decrease or stagnation? If historically the home values in the city that you're moving to have been going up by 2 to 5, some places go up 10%. They had been during the 2020 boom. There was some areas that were going up 10 to 20% a year. But as long as you're seeing historically, even the last few years, some upward trajectory in equity, and your program is longer than 3 years, then you can usually consider buying. 3 years is that weird cutoff where if you're there for less than 3 years, I don't recommend typically buying a home. One, you're buying with 100% financing, typically with a physician loan, which means you have zero equity. And whenever you sell your home, you're going to have some fees to pay, like your realtor fees, closing fees. Some states have taxes that you have to pay whenever you sell a house. And so you could be upside down whenever you go to sell your house if you are not there for long enough and the equity growth has not occurred to offset the deficit that you'll have in the fees that you'll pay when you close on the home. So longer than 3 years is definitely safer. I mean, if you're in an ortho program or whatever, if you're here 4 or 5 years, then yeah, absolutely consider purchasing a home if it's available to you. Right now, residents, depending on what state you are and what credit score you have, are typically qualifying for $350,000, somewhere in that price point. If you were just by yourself independently trying to purchase a home on an average salary of $65,000, I know that depends on what institution you're at and your salary, but that's oftentimes what we end up seeing residents purchasing homes for value-wise. But definitely the longer the program that you have, the more you can consider, and then the equity growth that the city has incurred, which is why you want to talk to a real estate agent that can pull the data for you, specifically for the areas that you're looking to purchase in as well. There's pockets in every city that have more growth than others. And so you want to make sure that the areas that you're looking at are those that have been up and coming or already on that upward trajectory of, increased value. You don't want to be in a neighborhood that's been depressed or has any issues with that equity growth. Physician loans, she's going to be talking about this in a little bit. I don't know why that says 0 to 10% down options. Well, I guess because potentially if we're talking about some condos and some lenders do make you put some money down. But 100% finance options for physician loans should be the standardized thing. I was on a phone with a client yesterday, though, that they were like, well, this one bank that I had recommended said that we couldn't qualify for the loan because of our student loans. And I'm like, that should not be an issue. Like, that's not how this is working. Like, it usually isn't considered because it's deferred, whatever. And they were like, no, they're going to take like 1% as the payment. Anyway, I called that bank, the lender that I typically use, and he's like, that lender had no idea what he was talking about. And the guy got approved and the interest rate was better and his approval amount was higher than the alternate bank that he was looking at. And this just gets me into the fact of every single bank that says they have a physician loan is going to have a different product. A lot of banks don't actually truly have a physician loan whenever you look at them underneath the hood. They have PMI hidden in different areas like higher interest rates or points that you pay at closing. More or less is how they're doing it. Or they'll get you in the doors with advertising saying that they have a physician loan, but then they'll push you into a conventional loan just because their product isn't actually a physician loan. A physician loan right now typically is having a better rate than the conventional mortgage loan rates, and you still get no PMI, no down payment. You shouldn't be paying huge amount of points at the end or anything like that. And then there's also different lenders that have different products. There's a lender in the area that if you have two people on the loan and one person has a horrific credit score, most banks, 99.9% of banks are going to take the middle score of the lowest credit score. So the individual with the lowest credit score, they'll take their lowest middle score. I have one lender that will actually take the highest. So the higher credit score, the middle higher credit score of the person with a higher credit score, they'll actually approve you based on their score, which is bananas. And I've never heard of that before, but that's an option. There's some lenders with 103% financing where you can finance in your closing costs too, but understand that you're either further upside down on your mortgage at that point. So if you're only there for 3 years, you need to make up 9% in equity in order to sell without a deficit, more or less, in order to pay off that extra 3% that you financed, as well as any kind of closing fees that you'll incur whenever you sell the home. So things to consider whenever you have special mortgages like that. I'm just saying, like, there's no one size fits all. I have agents call me all the time saying, who should I use as a physician loan? I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many variables. It depends on a multitude of things having to do with the client, their goal, what kind of home they're looking for, if it's a condo or a single family. So just to get nuanced, to say, having a lender or a realtor that's in this so heavily and knows the physician loan products and how to guide you to not just, the right institution, but the right lender within that institution, which we have an expert here today that I 100% encourage you to go to her and talk to her about what is available, because there are wolves in sheep clothing, I want to say, in the physician world, where you may not be actually getting what you think you're getting whenever you're talking to them, which is kind of unfortunate. Virtual home buying. So one big concern right now with a lot of residents is TSA is not performing at their peak. And I have a lot of people that are afraid to fly to come look at homes in person. I've been dealing with this since 2020, though. In 2020, I had 12 residents purchase homes that they never saw in person until after they closed on it, which seems bananas, but it worked out really well for them. I would say work with an agent that's comfortable with this. As a recommendation to you, to recommend to your agent, I don't love doing FaceTimes, live calls, where you have to make sure that service is good and that your schedules align and that people are answering their phone calls. So request that your agent take one long video and like a decent quality like video on their phone, starting at the front door, describing sounds, smells, the neighborhood that they're seeing, walk in the house, describe the sounds, and then focus on anything bad that they see. We can see everything pretty in the pictures whenever we're scrolling through Zillow. We want to see what they're hiding or the issues that we might assume if we were to purchase that home. And so that's how I do it. I upload them all into a Drive folder. That way you can watch it over and over again, share it with your family, get the opinion of your dad. And you could buy a home virtually safely, because you'll still do inspections and you can still come and see it after you go under contract on the home too. So some people are type A and they really want to come see that home in person, which is totally fine. But the option to buy virtually and remotely is fine. There's also mobile notaries across the United States. So whenever you have closing, you do not have to be in the city where you're purchasing a home in order to close on it. As long as you're in the continental US, most title companies can send a mobile notary to you to sign all of your documents remotely. So it should be a little bit stress-free if you're still trying to wrap things up or fit in a wedding or a vacation or a honeymoon or whatever it is before you start training. The tight timeline and logistics is something that we as agents in our organization and those that specialize with working with physicians this time of year absolutely understand. So, late night calls, early morning texts, none of that is surprising to me. I was texting with someone last night at 11 o'clock and then I woke up to having one at 3, and I'm not offended by it. I tell everybody in the beginning, like, you can text me whenever. I may not respond right away, but my phone's on silent. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I know that your hours are crazy. So just text me when you're thinking about it and I'll get back to you whenever I can. Obviously, the agent that you're working with needs to know local insights, the hospital system that you're working in, and the commute times to it. There are some cool tools that you can use. There's a website called SMAPPEN, SMAPPEN, and you can put in the address of your hospital and ask it to draw a 10-minute radius, and it'll, based on traffic, 10-minute radius at 7 a.m. And based on traffic patterns, it will draw you an outline of where you need to live within surrounding that hospital to be within that time frame. I've found that one really, really helpful. So 10, 15, 20 minutes, you can change it based on that. That has been really helpful. Crime maps, I definitely, if there's crimemap.org, I want to say is the name of the website, which is a really good, helpful. You can make it so it only shows violent crime or, you know, all crime, but it'll have like a heat map of green, yellow, orange, red, like areas where it has more crime per population. Just be careful of not like getting too pigeonholed into that. There's some really great neighborhoods in St. Louis that population, like actually, for example, we have the largest city park of any city in the United States. Our Forest Park is huge. And when you look at the map, it's like bright red. Well, it's because if one violent crime happens, the population is 0, so it looks high. So there's some things within the map that you have to like understand that there's nuances to it, but it's kind of a general helpful guide. Realtors aren't allowed to technically steer you to and from any specific neighborhoods. We can't redline you. We can't say, oh, you can't live north of that street, or you can't live on that side of the railroad tracks, or they shouldn't be saying that. I do try to help people connect to the city by connecting them with other residents that are there currently. Like there's actually, here's what I do is I have a huge resource that I am able to send out a survey to all the current residents and fellows in the programs in St. Louis each year and figure out if they're renting or if they're buying, what neighborhood they're living in, and what they like about it on a scale of 0 to 10. Is it walkable, safe, shopping, commute, whatever that may be. And so they actually have like a graphed, like a page with a bunch of charts and graphs that show exactly like where everybody's living and what they like about it, so that you can kind of figure out what neighborhood might match your needs. But your real estate agent should be able to, for the most part, let you know like, oh, you're wanting more like walkable, shopping, lively, urban, like sure, the Grove or Central West End or whatever it may be is where you need to land. Each agent in each city should be able to point you in the direction to the one that's going to match what your needs are. And then professional and social connections. My job isn't done whenever a purchase home is purchased or someone rents a home. You know, if you need services for an attorney or a CPA or whatever it may be in the city, connecting you to that, handyman, contractors, whatever that may be, and then social too. You know, there's a lot of really great organizations for physician spouses and physicians to connect with one another outside of work and outside of the home, so that you guys can like build your community in the new city that you're going to, which I think is extraordinarily important. Even with your busy schedules, you need a social life. So a lot of cities have really, really robust social and community focused programs for all of you, and having someone that knows about them and can connect you to them is really helpful in getting you transitioned into a new city. Whether you're moving from a big city to a small town or vice versa, it all can be a little jarring. So I think getting acclimated through others is always extraordinarily helpful. Let me know when I need to wrap up too, because I can make this quick. Biggest mistakes, just waiting too long to start planning. Like I said, choosing an agent that's unfamiliar with physician moves or the phase of training that you're in. If you're calling someone right now that doesn't understand what transition you're going through and you say, I'm a physician moving to this new city, you know, a lot of agents don't understand that you're a physician. If you're just coming out of medical school, making very little income with a lot of debt and needing this physician loan product, you know, they'll be really surprised when you say, I only qualified for $300,000. They're going to be like, what? I thought you were a doctor, but they don't understand you're a baby doctor right now. Just give me a little while. We're getting there, you know? So it's just nice to not have to explain yourself to an agent that already knows what you're going through, because they understand this process. You know, don't just assume that renting is always safer. Renting can be safe, but make sure that the property manager or who you're renting from is going to protect you. If the air conditioner breaks, I had a resident a couple years ago that rented a house and they had 4 kids and there was no air conditioner and they could not get their landlord to fix it. It was a nightmare for them. So just making sure who you're renting from, that you've vetted them as well. It's not just about getting whatever home you can get your hands on. Like, you want to make sure that it's going to be able to keep you safe during the time that you are in your program. And whoever is your landlord or management company is a huge component to that. So if there is a management company that you are leasing from, Google them, make sure what their ratings are, what the reviews are, see if you know anybody in the program that's rented from them before and ask their opinion on if they were helpful, because you don't want broken air conditioners or furnaces and discomfort while you're in training. You need to have someone that's going to come take care of those things, that you don't have to shoulder the burden of paying for the repair because they're not doing their job and due diligence. Assuming purchasing will always turn a profit, like I said, there could be downturns in the market. We have no crystal ball. Having preparation to potentially have a home as a rental if you do purchase a home early on in residency. I don't think that it's as burdensome as some people think. As long as you have for the most part, as long as you have a handyman, like somewhat available to call if something happens, and you can collect monthly rent on Venmo or something, I think that having a single home, no matter where you go after residency, is a very viable option for you and can be beneficial for tax purposes, but that's for a different subject altogether. So just be mentally prepared when you purchase a home. It may be something, depending on the market, that you do keep for a little while as a rental, and that's not the end of the world. I don't think. I think people get intimidated by the thought of managing a rental from across the country, and it's not as big of a deal as I think that you would think it is. So just in case you want to get a hold of us, we're personally vetted agents. Every one of the agents in our organization is a very qualified full-time agent that has been in their business and in their city for quite some time, is a physician's spouse, either currently or previously. And we do warm introductions with them. We're not just going to send you a phone number and say good luck. We want to introduce you, hold your hand through the process, and make sure that you're being taken care of and that your questions are being answered throughout the process. So if you want to get a hold of us, our Instagram is Moving Medicine Partners. Our email address is info@movingmedicinepartners. And again, I'm Zoe Taylor, so feel free to reach out. Anybody have any questions? How do you recommend we find a realtor in our area? Someone knowledgeable about physician loans? You can go through our organization. We do the vetting for you. So there's some random places. Lincoln, Nebraska. We just found an agent in Lincoln, Nebraska that we did the vetting for, a med student intern that was moving out there. And we called, I think, 8 different agents before we felt satisfied with someone who had enough knowledge and experience to take care of the resident that was going to be moving there. So if you contact us, even if we don't have an agent in your area, we work really hard to find the person that's going to be able to support you in your journey.
I think that's all the questions for you, Zoe, but thank you so much. Really giving them some insight on, their relocation, or whether they're just relocating down the street or, across state lines. It really helps give them a brighter view of what to look for. All right, guys. So I'm going to finish up our webinar here with more in-depth about physician home loans. But before I get started, wanted you to really think of all these presenters today. I talked to all of my clients that I work with, really making sure that they have a wealth team in their corner, really helping them in different aspects as they're going through every stage in their career, in their life. So I really want you guys to also think about that as well. Get in contact with these people, book those one-on-ones to really answer any specific questions you guys may have. And then going into this, my name is Kayla again. I am a mortgage advisor. I've been in the industry, in the lending side at least, for about 5+ years. And then prior to that, I was actually a real estate agent. One thing led to another, knowing that I would be in my position where I am, where I'm with my partner. He is in his medical journey right now. We're a little bit early in our journey than where you guys are right now, but knowing that I have the flexibility to help him, help other people, we're making friends with, and really helping strategize how we could use a mortgage to run efficiently to help you guys in your next step into homeownership. One of the biggest assets you guys will be, acquiring, and then really how you could use this as the next stepping stone to help build your wealth. So with that being said, we're going to really talk about, the core essence of a physician loan, as well as some kind of backtracking with what Joe was talking about, rent versus buying, and really seeing which one would make sense for you guys. So there's really 4 key components. And one of the things you guys want to think about is about a physician loan that's not traditionally used. And what's unique about it are these things. It's that you have up to 100% financing, which also relates to you saying, hey, I don't have to put any money down to purchase a property, right? To purchase a home. And one of the things we want to look at when we're talking about this is that there are some beautiful things like having no mortgage insurance. So when you're talking about a traditional loan that you're going to get, anything that you do where you're putting less than 20% down payment, you're going to be subjected to private mortgage insurance. And really what this insurance does isn't really any benefit to you as a borrower. It's to benefit the lender and help protect them in case you as a borrower foreclose, bankrupt, default, anything on your loan and on your property. It's to kind of give them some insurance on that part. One of the biggest, I think, factors and benefits of using this physician loan, a true physician loan, is having that flexibility of omitting your student loan payments. In my particular case, my physician loan product, we could help you in your residency and fellowship years, during your training years, omit those payments, and helping you purchase higher or having more purchase power in your designated areas. And then the second thing, or excuse me, the last thing that we want to talk about is using that future income. So traditionally, when we're looking at who qualifies for a loan, we always want to look at the past 2 years of someone's employment and where their trend is, whether they trend, their income trends positively or negatively, and what they're currently making year to date. For you guys, it's a little bit different. You've been training and studying these past few years. What we look at as the bank is what your future income is. So what that means is we want to look at what that contract is and what that guarantee is specifically on that contract you guys are going to be signing or have signed. And one of the unique things we look at when we're looking at a physician loan and our contract specifically is, let's say you signed your contract today, right? You're going to have a certain leeway or runway of how many days until your employment start date where you will be eligible to use that income. So for us, it's about 150 days from your contract start date for us to use that income to guarantee you, hey, you're making this much money, right? To give you an example, your probably base salary is probably going to be around maybe 60K. We'll just kind of go there. What we look at and what we want to make sure you guys, or they don't really want to make sure, but what I want to make sure you guys know is that we're looking at your gross income. So not after tax dollars. We typically qualify you guys on that gross amount. Say you make 60,000, that's about 5,000 a month. Depending on the markets you're going to be in, right? A lot of you guys are in California. I'm originally from California, Los Angeles area. So I know a lot of prices that are higher priced than other parts of the country. It might be a little bit challenging to find a property that you want to purchase at a $5,000 a month income. So there are ways around this where we could try to increase your income just depending on, what the scenario is. One of those being is seeing the different type of loan products within the physician loans we could use. There's fixed rates, there's ARM products, and basically the difference is a fixed rate is a fixed mortgage payment for a certain amount of term. So you're pretty much going to see typically a 30-year term, but we have lower terms like 25, 20-year terms, even maybe a 15-year term that we could talk about. Other products, an ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. And so this one's a little bit dependent on, how long you're going to be in your residency program. If you're more in the 3 years, I more or less wouldn't recommend you look at, purchasing a property because you're going to be in and out there really quick. There's other things that we're going to talk about, but using an ARM for a certain amount of time, maybe while you're temporarily at your residency location, could be beneficial to you because they will come at lower rates, more flexibility that you'll have. Now, one of the other things we can do to increase your purchasing power is if you have a co-borrower, whether it's a partner, a spouse, a family member who is willing to co-sign on the loan for you, we can use their income to help boost maybe what you guys could qualify for in your surrounding areas. But there are some limitations to what a co-borrower can be used as far as income. You're going to be capped at what you're making. So for that example, we're going to say, again, you're about 60,000 annual salary, you're about 5,000 a month. Your co-borrower is capped at what amount you make. So even if they make maybe double, triple, whatever it is of income, they're only going to be capped at making 5,000 a month. So in total, you both collectively will have a purchasing power of $10,000 of qualifying income. So again, it just depends on where you're going to be purchasing in your residency area. This is where Zoe and her network of realtors are going to be really beneficial to use for data, to knowing one, what's the entry point, what's that growth appreciation in the areas, right? More or less how easy and what's a quick turnaround to get something closed and then also get back on the market. And then, so really having that planning, putting into place is exponential. Now, I want to quickly, let me just share a screen here with all of you. So I think you guys, can you guys see my screen okay? Thumbs up. Okay. So this is analysis I do for all of my clients. This one I have here is comparing renting versus buying. And then I put two different cost areas. So I know California, I'm originally from California. I moved here to New Mexico with my partner. So you're going to see here already, you know, California prices could be extremely higher than this, but I'm just going to say ballpark throughout the state, maybe 700,000. In New Mexico, you're going to see a fluctuating anywhere from 150 to 350 and maybe a little bit higher, right? And higher end luxury. But for where you guys want to see, really look at what the price points are and then really seeing there's different physician loans, there's different physician products. I'm showing you here two different scenarios based off today's rates, what a fixed mortgage rate would look like at 7.25 versus a 5/6 ARM. So really what this means is this adjustable rate mortgage is fixed for the first 5 years of owning the home. And then at every 6 months, it would readjust. So at that point, yes, there's some benefit because it's maybe at a lower entry, you know, lower payment, but we also have to combine that with your strategy of how long you're going to be in their residency to see if an ARM would make sense or if it'd be better to be safe with a more fixed cost over a 30-year term or a longer term period. And essentially, what you want to also look at is that total payment. Total payment, let's just say you're more or less renting for $2,000, maybe a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, who knows? You're going to see that California, and I only know this because of recent stuff that's happened, right? The fires, everything. There's a lot of things that increased monthly mortgage payments. One of them being a big kicker is homeowners insurance in the area, where in other parts of the country, you know, you're going to have a little bit lower costs, right, for your mortgage payment. Homeowners insurance, your property taxes throughout the different states are going to be different, right? So all of this plays into the fact of when we're talking about what our budget is, right? How much we're allocating that 60% to. Do we really want in our first transitional years, in our intern years, to take about 6,000 of our pay towards our you know, mortgage? Is that going to be, again, living on ramen? Or do we want to have that lifestyle whenever we can go out and start allocating, maybe having that emergency fund also saved up, as well as maybe putting it away for that right time to purchase? So let's look at our different markets. Let's compare and contrast the different stuff, you know, when it comes to payment, also strategy. One of the things I want to make sure you guys are aware of is that when that time is right to purchase, look at it as this is your total payment, right? But look at the underlying things and benefits that you're going to need to start talking about. And I don't want to get too much into it because this is not today's topic, but later down the line, owning real estate, how could it be beneficial for when it's, you know, tax purposes, how much you're going to be saving. And then now through a different lens, you know, think of a mortgage and real estate and buying a property as like a forced savings, like anything else, like a 401k. So you're putting principal into your house every month. You're forcing savings. You're building that equity in your property. So now look at it and do two lenses. Your total payment is one, but after you deduct your tax benefits and the principal you're paying every month towards your equity and your net worth, look at that net monthly payment and seeing what that difference is for you. And after looking at all those savings, what that would be, right, in your overall financial picture. And then also what it might look like to cash to close. Right now, again, in certain areas, New Mexico is a little bit high. I wasn't able to adjust these numbers before the presentation. I kind of just took California, but New Mexico is going to be a lot lower. When it comes to closing costs, more or less, typically it was always like 2 to 3%. Higher cost areas, you might looking at like 3.5–4%, right? Range 2 to 4%. Just be aware that that could be a possibility. Again, just because of these other factors that go into your mortgage payment that you also have to pay at the end when you're trying to close on your property that make up your closing cost fees. So you're going to be impounding your taxes, your insurance. You're going to be paying upfront your whole insurance premiums. So all of these go into a factor of what you're going to have to come in with at the closing table. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And let me go back to the presentation itself. And then one of the things I want to next talk about is, and some of the stuff Zoe talked about are the key factors and the decision makers, right? There's a lot of other ones, but I want to say these are probably the top and main three. Is that time horizon? How long is your residency program? Do you think you're going to be staying in that area? Is this an area that maybe you have friends, family, support, community where you might want to continue living there or continue owning a property there, right? So that's a big one. That would be a factor for you guys. The second one is, what's that monthly cash flow? Can you comfortably cover that payment without any strain, without making, having to work overtimes, having to moonlight and stuff like that? Is this going to be something where at the end it's going to be more beneficial for you to own, or is it maybe makes sense for you to maybe rent because you know what, just the area I'm going to be moving to, it just doesn't make sense right now at this time to do that. And then the biggest one for me is whenever you're getting into the property, I always tell them, like a lot of people talked about earlier today, and it's going to be a common theme, right? The planning stage for entry as well as exit. So exit is just as important as trying to get into a property. You want to know that you have multiple outs where you can get out of a property, because it's a commitment like anything else, right? You're committing to an area, you're committing to this mortgage payment, you're committing to a lot of things for the duration that you're trying to be in your residency program. So what does it look like when you're looking to sell? What do those numbers look like? What are you going to net? What is it going to look like if you want to rent it out? Right here, I'm actually going to put in the chat this website. It's called Rentometer. It's something I use to quickly look at just more or less what rents in the area would be. So it's a great way for you to go on Zillow, right? Look at maybe a listing that's similar to what you want, or a listing that you're thinking about purchasing, and then seeing what that will look like as far as renting out after. Will it cover my mortgage payment? Will I profit off of it, or will I be negative? That'll also be another way to know if we have multiple outs for you at the end. And then also at this current point in time, right now we're in a little bit of a higher rate environment. And for those who don't know how mortgage rates work, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And mortgage rates fluctuate throughout the day, multiple times throughout the day. And so the mortgage that we have right now will not probably be the mortgage you'll have later on, or where mortgages are, right? They might go down, they might go up, they might fluctuate. We want to make sure we're looking at refinance strategies and timing in the market to where it makes sense for you in your strategy and your planning, right, in residency, and what that next step is, whether you're going to fellowship or whether you're going to be starting your new attending job. Next up, we're going to just, again, this is really quick. And I know we're a little bit over time, but renting versus buying. Do you want that flexibility? Do you want that, especially, you're going into residency, you're going to not have a lot of time. Do you want to really have the maintenance and the chores to, if something happens where it breaks, do you want to fix that, or do you want your landlord to fix it? And then also, you're not going to have equity built up over time, but that might be not the most important thing for you right now. Maybe your most important thing is, hey, I want to aggressively pay down my student loans, and that's the important thing for you. Let's like really figure out what's the most important stuff for you to know if building equity is something we value right now or if something else is. And then same goes for buying, right? That building equity portion, locking in those costs over time, because homes will appreciate over time, and making sure we're getting a property and building that net worth at the best time we can. And then how using real estate to leverage our net worth. And then, this is just really quick, the wealth equation, looking at it again in a different lens. It's a little messed up here, but basically you use your home as your asset and your liability in the ways of, you're going to buy this property, and as inflation increases and your home value is going to increase, right? But as your inflation increases, your debt's going to stay locked in for a certain fixed time, right? And so in a way of contrasting renting versus buying, rents in your area might increase typically anywhere from 2, 3, or 4% a year, right? And you don't have any control of when it will go up. With a mortgage payment, you have that fixed payment for a certain amount of time that we look at. So looking at these different strategies and using your mortgage as a tool to help build your wealth is the way you want to look at it in this lens, and not so much as looking at it just a debt payment. And then lastly, next steps, you're going to hear it a lot, but again, time horizon, get that locked in, really figuring out what that monthly cash flow is. And for you, cash flow is like really looking at your budget, seeing that 60, 20, 20, where you want to allocate majority of how much you're going to get paid to. And then seeing what are all the different type of physician loan options should you look at, if it's time to look at, and makes sense for you in the area you're looking in. And then lastly, those exit strategies. I cannot harp on this enough. I would hate to have you stuck in a position where you're going to, maybe in a year you find out this program's not for you and you want to move, but you're going to be stuck in a property that's going to hold you into an area, or maybe you're going to have to do something where you're renting it out and it might not be positively cash flowing, right? So you want to make sure we're looking at all angles when it comes to real estate. And then the goal isn't just really to buy a home, just making sure that this decision you guys are going to be making is improving your long-term financial position while protecting your cash flow today. So that's pretty much it for me. And I know we're about 5 minutes over. Let me see if you guys have any questions. I think. No, do I have a question? Hold on. Nope, I don't think we have any questions. Cool. So that was pretty much it from me. I just want to say thank you everyone for attending. Congratulations again on this huge milestone and this next chapter in your journey. Please use us as a resource for anything you guys might have from now until the start date, as well as, going on to really help you through this transitional period. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your night and talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.